Our guest today, Yafit Cohn, is Vice President, Chief Sustainability Officer, and Group General Counsel at the Travelers Companies in New York City. Yafit, before that, worked at a pair of law firms, and she's one of those people, when I first met, I immediately knew, like, this person is going somewhere. She's a very special person, and she's helped travelers do some very special things in the E&S space. I'm Brock Romanek, today on Zippy Point. So Yafit, figure out which frameworks to use. This is such a complicated topic, but maybe it's not that complicated. So who participated at Travelers in ascertaining which framework that the company should follow?
Well, I'll start by saying that decision was largely guided by our extensive investor engagements. We've engaged with about 50% of our investor base before we started our disclosure process. And so based on my review of the various standards and frameworks, based on all of those conversations with investors, I was able to make an informed recommendation to our multidisciplinary senior level ESG committee. And that's how I got the buy-in to proceed. I'll tell you a little bit about what we ultimately decided. We decided that it was best for us to use several different frameworks. And that's because there is this inextricable connectivity between our business strategy and our relevant ESG factors. And so for that reason, we were really drawn to the International Integrated Reporting Council's framework, which I know not many people speak about, but it really spoke to us because of that integrated strategy. And because we saw quite a bit of investor interest in the SASB standards, we also wanted to provide SASB disclosure. And that decision was actually not difficult for us because we had already been engaging with SASB and we understood the potential benefits of reporting to the SASB standards. And we were also seeing investor interest in the TCFD framework, so we decided to provide disclosure consistent with the TCFD recommendations as well. But then at that point, with multiple frameworks we wanted to respond to, our next question was, how do we address multiple frameworks in a way that would be least confusing and most helpful to our investors and other stakeholders? So because neither the SASB standards nor the TCFD framework would address all the topics that we identified through our prioritization exercise as relevant to travelers, we did decide to publish a comprehensive website that is aligned with the Integrated Reporting Council framework and that discusses how our company creates long-term shareholder value in the broadest sense, including by taking care of our customers, our communities, and our employees. And then for reference, we provided on our site a content index, which maps out the disclosures on our site to the content elements of that framework, as well as to the Global Reporting Initiative, or GRI framework, for any stakeholders who might potentially be interested in that. But we did decide to take a different approach with our SASB and TCFD reporting. Because of the level of investor interest that we observed with respect to both the SASB standards and the TCFD framework, we decided that it would make the most sense to give our investors standalone SASB and TCFD reports so that this way our investors could easily view them or print them separately.
Yeah, I really recommend that everyone go ahead and look at Travelers E&S webpage because that's best in class and that's give you a good idea of what the high bar is.
Thanks, Brock.
So did you look at what your peers are doing, the peer companies are doing?
So to be honest, very little. We really wanted to forge our own path here. But more importantly, I would say we were looking at this project through a different prism. It was much more important for us to understand what our investors were interested in and what would be most helpful to them, rather to see what our peer companies were doing. So for example, with respect to the frameworks for disclosure that we were just talking about, investor interest was a driving factor in leading us towards SASB and TCFD. And we're now leaders among domestic property and casualty insurers in providing both SASB and TCFD disclosure.
Thanks very much. For other videos that Yafit has made with me, have a look in the show notes. There's links to those. Thank you very much, Yafit.
Thanks, Brock.